Hi guys, welcome to the affordable high grade Copper Age Keys to Invest in video. It's been a long time coming, but there's been a high demand. A few people have messaged me saying they want more investment videos, so I thought, why not start up a YouTube channel? This is going to be the first of many, and we're going to go straight into it. Affordable high grade Copper Age Keys. Now, these keys aren't going to be the most popular or necessarily the most valuable, the most sought after. These are just comics from that age, which is mainly the mid 80s to, I'd say, right at the beginning of the 90s. That's the Copper Age. It's from that age, keys that you can have in the highest grade possible. So we'll be looking obviously at the highest grade 9.8 as a base, and it's keys that you can own from that age in a 9.8 for affordable prices compared to some of the bigger ones. So without further ado, we'll go straight into it. Starting off, as you can see, Batman 436. This is the first appearance of Tim Drake, who becomes the third Robin. Now, obviously, if you're not that into comics and you just watch the Batman movies or even the Batman animated movies, you might not know that there is more than one Robin throughout history. So obviously, we had Dick Grayson, he was the original. We had Jason Todd, who we'll touch on further in a minute. And we had the third one, Tim Drake. And there was a few more after that, including Damian Wayne, who was actually Batman's son. But this is the first appearance of Tim Drake. As you can see from the graph, it's fluctuated in price over the years. It was very flat in the noughties, and then from 2016, it's been up and down, up and down. It had a big spike around the comic boom, which was in 2021, where people were just investing all types of figures into comic books, splashing cash on different keys. A lot of comics saw a big spike in 2021, and since then it's been steadily declining, and there's just a little uptick at the end on that graph. Looking at the 5-year return, it's quite small, 53%. It's the 10-year return that you see the biggest return for investment. If you had bought this book in 2013, you would now be sitting on a 257% return on investment. Even for the 5-year return, it still compares pretty well with some of the stocks crypto that I've listed below. It actually performs better than both of the crypto coins, Litecoin and Ethereum, and it even slightly edges Amazon. It's nowhere near Apple in terms of performance returning on investment in 5 years, but it's still, just because it's quite a relatively unpopular key from the Copper Age, it gets slept on. To be fair, I actually think it's undervalued. Tim Drake is an important character in the Bat family. He's been around for a while, and I think he's going to be around he's going to be used more going forward. We've seen him in the comics recently. There was that controversial, him coming out as bisexual storyline. Some people had problems with it, other people's didn't. It's one of those things. Other people didn't. It's one of those things where it doesn't matter whether you believe or you don't believe or you agree with it, whatever your political views are. It's something that drew attention to the character. I guess overall for good reasons. For equality, it was about representation. It was a bit random though, because Tim Drake has been around for a while. There's never been any type of hint that the character's like that. I do think they should have just introduced a new character if they were going to make, someone close to Batman bisexual. It was a bit random. It came out of nowhere. And yeah, but that blew up quite a bit of Tim Drake's keys. And even just in general in the media, he's starting to be used more compared to the other Robins. Like even in the latest game, Gotham Knights, which is the image I've just shown you there. He's one of the main characters that you can actually play as. He's slept on quite a bit. Obviously, maybe it's because he's the third Robin. He's not as popular as Jason Todd, and definitely not as popular as Dick Grayson. But this is a comic that I still think long term it's worth grabbing it now in such a high grade 9.8. And have you seen the figures below? Previously, it is actually really affordable. So it's one of those keys. It's a low risk investment. You're not investing too much into him, but I do think it will stand the test of time, just because even now, like DC is starting to get popular again. I know a lot of Marvel heads might not agree, but DC is really starting to turn a corner. There's a lot of controversy going on. James Gunn has taken over DC Studios. He said he's going to reboot the entire universe. There's even rumors he's going to have a separate Batman to the Matt Reeves one that we saw in 2022. So we're going to have two potential universes with Batman and Batman related characters, you've got to say there's high hopes that Tim Drake will be at some point used in a live action movie or in another project coming up from Warner Brothers, because it seems like they're going to split Batman into two different universes, which means also the people that are close to him in the comics and in his lore will be making more appearances. So definitely one worth picking up right now. Another Batman book, Batman 428. As I mentioned, there was three main Robins that are, well, the three most popular Robins: Tim Drake, Dick Grayson, and the second Robin, which was Jason Todd. This issue is the death of Jason Todd. In the comics, if you're not a big comic fan, he actually dies to the hands of Joker. The Joker actually kills him, in a way, obviously to spite Batman. It's something that he wanted to have over Batman, and he taunts him a lot about it in the comics. We briefly saw something like that in the live action film. I think it was Zack Snyder's Justice League, where the Joker was taunting Batman for not being able to save Robin. So yeah, it's a very, very popular storyline. It leads on to one of the most popular Batman storylines of all time, Under the Red Hood. I suggest if you're not that comic, your comic knowledge isn't 100, I suggest going out and getting that comic in a trade paperback, in a soft cover, or even just looking at Under the Red Hood, the movie. You can buy it really cheap on Blu-ray, stream it, however you want to watch it. Not that I condone illegal streaming, but just go out there and look into that movie and into that storyline. It's a really good storyline. Jason Todd dies, and then he is resurrected thanks to Ra's al Ghul and becomes the Red Hood. And this book, I think the issue just before this book, they done a vote saying that if you wanted Robin to survive, you can vote for him to live or to die. It was a very popular storyline at the time. And the main thing is, this book has a lot of black on the cover, which, if you're new to comic book collecting, affects the book a lot, because it's very easy for it to get ruined in terms of spine ticks, creases, white lines, stuff like that. So to have a black cover in a very, very high grade is quite difficult. You can see, compared to Tim Drake, currently the 9.8 is a lot more valuable. It's a $496 book. It is one of those books that has grown in value. You can even see, actually, the highest peak that this book had was around 2008, and that was actually the time that I think the animated movie Under the Red Hood came out. So, but since then, it's starting to climb back up. It stayed flat for a while. It's starting to climb back up. It saw really good gains. Comparing it to Tim Drake, its 5-year return is a lot bigger. So in the last 5 years, people are paying more attention to this Batman key than Tim Drake. 5-year return compared to stocks and crypto, it outperforms all three except Apple, just like Tim Drake, with a little bit more return on investment. Its 10-year return is a little bit less than Tim Drake's, though, however. Although that might be because it was at such a high peak at the start of the 2010s that it is pretty hard for it to climb as much, whereas Tim Drake was a really low start at the 2010s, start of the decade, and it's slowly crept up since. Either way, I believe this is a Batman key that's worthy of investment. Jason Todd's a really popular Robin, and it's one of those books where I just see it's going to be something that DC will look into. It's one of the most popular Batman storylines. I can't see them not using it in live action. I think it will make a really good Batman movie. To have a live action Joker actually kill Robin, and him coming back as Red Hood, questioning Batman and his morals, his code. Why haven't you killed Joker? Why do you let him get away with things? It'd make a really good movie. I honestly think this book is going to keep appreciating in value in the next 5 to 10 years. So definitely worth picking this up in a 9.8 now while it's still in reach. Moving on to Marvel, X-Men 212. This is the first battle of Sabretooth and Wolverine. A very, very important key in Wolverine's lore. If you're a Wolverine fan, this is definitely something you should have in your collection. Even if you're a Sabretooth fan. Massive performance in 5-year return. As you can see, 568%. From 2018 to 2023, it's gone up 568%. It's outperformed Apple stock, Amazon stock, Ethereum, and Litecoin. It's outperformed everything. 10-year return, to be fair, is still pretty strong as well, 241%. And I think that would have been bigger if it didn't dip. So as you can see from the graph and even from the text, 2013 to 2018, it actually halved in value. It went down from 100 to 51 in average sales. And since 2018, it's now gone up to an average of $341. It's just one of those keys that I think is going to stand the test of time. And with the MCU bringing the X-Men to, you know, to the forefront, apparently in phase 5 and 6, you got to wonder that, are they actually going to do Sabretooth justice in this universe, and are we going to see a Sabretooth and Wolverine rivalry that we should have had with Fox? Really, like, I don't think Fox done Sabretooth justice at all. In the comics, he's a menace to Wolverine. He's constantly trying to hurt those close to him. I think we saw it in X-Men Origins, but that's a one-off, man. I don't think they done Sabretooth enough justice. I think he was underused. Again, this book has a lot of black on the cover, so a 9.8. It might be another reason why the 9.8 is maintaining strong gains as time goes by. I do think in the next 5 to 10 years this will appreciate even more. I might even have to revisit some of these books because I've got a lot of confidence that these keys, although undervalued now from the Copper Age, these are all keys that they're not in. If you had a top 10 list of Copper Age keys to buy, they're not these aren't the biggest Copper Age keys, but these are keys that have value in them. Like, these are important keys in comic history that could appreciate in value in the next 5 to 10 years, that I personally think will. And as you can see from the figures, it's pretty strong. It's looking likely that might be the case. And to be honest, even if you're not in it for the investment side of things, this is a big key for Wolverine fans. I would definitely say this is a must-have. Me, myself, I'm a Wolverine fan. I've got a few copies of this Raw. I've got a 9.2. I'm definitely looking to upgrade it to a 9.8 soon. It's just definitely one of those. Even Sabretooth. If you're a Sabretooth fan, this is something you need to have in your collection. They're constant rivals. They're constantly fighting, trying to kill each other, trying to one-up on each other. And I can't see the MCU introducing a new Wolverine and him not having a Sabretooth rivalry. It wouldn't make sense. Like, I'm sure Kevin Feige and the people at Disney know there's so much potential there. Moving on to another X-Men key, X-Factor 6. If you don't know, this is the first full appearance of Apocalypse. Apocalypse is arguably one of the biggest X-Men villains, could be the biggest X-Men villain. He is, in comic lore, the first ever mutant. So he was the first ever of their kind. And he's constantly caused problems for the X-Men in comic history, in the animated series. Those of you that might have grown up with the 90s animated series might remember him. Even most recently, the Apocalypse movie that came out in 2016. It wasn't the best, but we've had a recent portrayal of him. I don't think that movie done him enough justice. But we'll get onto that in a second a bit more. Just looking at the graph, it's been very, very steady. It hasn't fluctuated as much as the previous keys we've looked at. It's been quite a straight line. Up until 2021, the comic boom, as expected, it started to really spike. And since then, it's stayed pretty level. It hasn't really come down too much since then. Looking at 5-year returns of 155%, 10-year return of 202%. If you had bought this in 2013, you would have only spent $134 for the highest grade, and now it's a $406 book. It's outperforming everything in stock and crypto except Apple in 5 years. And it just goes to show again, comic books can be a really good investment. Again, this is not one of the most popular Copper Age keys, but it's such an undervalued comic book, like important piece of comic history that you could own in the highest grade condition possible. And I would definitely say invest in this because, I mean, we know we've had Apocalypse, as I said. It wasn't the best portrayal of him. I mean, he looked great. I just don't think they done him enough justice in terms of his powers, the story. I think he shouldn't have been a one and done villain in terms of he shouldn't have just appeared in one movie. I think he should have been spanned across a few movies, which is why I think in the MCU we will see a much better version of him. He could be almost like a Thanos, but for the X-Men. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the character in the future. Definitely a book I would recommend picking up now while it's still so affordable and a high grade. Amazing Spider-Man $2.99. This is the last book on the list. First cameo appearance of Venom. Venom needs no introduction. He's probably the most famous worldwide Spider-Man villain out there. He's one of his most popular nemesis. Very similar powers, obviously from the symbiote. If you know the whole, if you're comic savvy, you would know that the black suit Spider-Man, it was actually an alien symbiote in the comics, and we've seen it in Spider-Man 3 as well. They adapted it into live action. It was an alien symbiote. It was a parasite, and Peter Parker ripped it away from him. It joined with Eddie Brock, and it became, they both had hatred for Peter Parker and Spider-Man, so they became Venom, and that's why they hate Spider-Man so much and why they're constantly trying to kill him. In the comics, he's changed a little bit. He's more of an anti-hero. He's been an anti-hero for a while, to be honest. He's gone back and forth a bit, but I think he's more of an anti-hero, which is a bit of a shame because I actually really like him as a Spider-Man villain. Looking at the graph, very, very steady. And the reason for this is Amazing Spider-Man 300 is his first full appearance, and that is the big money book. But we're not looking at the big money books or the most popular. Like I said, this is purely about the most affordable, high grade Copper Age keys, and this is the most expensive one, so we're not going anything more than $570 to keep it in that affordable bracket. You could own this book in the highest grade possible, 9.8, $570, 5-year returns of 128, 10-year returns of 204, really strong gains. We haven't seen any of these comics with losses, even though you could see from the graphs they have been downward spikes and there have been dips, but overall, over the test of time, 5-year and 10-year, these comics are actually appreciating in value. And like I keep saying, these are comics that aren't necessarily the big money books, the best of the best, the most sought after, but these are important comics. And you can see even the comics that not everyone's out here paying the most attention to are still appreciating in value. It's still outperforming, yet again, Amazon, Ethereum, and Litecoin. Apple's the only stock that is comparing to these comic books. Can you imagine if we actually started to look at the bigger comic books? But yeah, like I said, this is the first cameo appearance of Venom. He appears on the last page for the first time ever. I think it's very undervalued. I think there's loads of people debating if this should count as just his first appearance. Obviously, with comic books, there's the whole debate about cameo and first full. Really and truly, if you take the words cameo and full out, this is the first time you ever see Venom ever in a comic book or anywhere. So just when you take that into consideration, this book is crazily undervalued. And I do think with Spider-Man growing more popular, with Venom actually coming to the MCU, as you know, the symbiote was left in the MCU by Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock's character in No Way Home. So we know he's coming there. You can see in the image that I've shown you, he is appearing in the Spider-Man 2 game coming out this year as well, which I'm really excited for. He's used in media a lot. And Venom is becoming more of a household name now, whereas compared to how he was in the 90s, unless you read comics, you weren't really, familiar with Venom as a character. So it's definitely someone I would suggest investing in while he's still so affordable. So yeah, guys, that's all the affordable Copper Age keys, and tune in next time for the next video.